Hey, ladies and gentlemen, the purpose of this press conference is to bring you up to date on where we're at on the missing persons case that we're running on a missing juvenile, Naomi Jones. As most of you should be aware, on the 31st of May at approximately 1 p.m. And that's probably a good juncture here to give everyone a cautionary note. Number one, this investigation is still very fluid and very ongoing, and even using other than the date of the 31st to give you a specific time that this young lady, is missing is something that is subject to change. The information that we've gathered today in this ongoing investigation has proven that, meaning that it could have been around noon. It could have been as late as 4 p.m. of that day before she actually came up missing. As you can well imagine, we refer to our investigative process as concentric circles, meaning that we start here and we start to eliminate what is the obvious, and as the investigation continues to expand, we find that things that were initial premises begin to change. And so I will tell you, even with that initial statement that went out on one of the flyers, by the way, from one of our partners in this process, the Class Kids Foundation, reported 1 p.m. We're finding out information today it could have been as late as 4. But again, those are things that as this investigation continues to unfold, hopefully at some point in time, at the conclusion of this investigation, we can get a definitive number on that. Naomi Jones, again, is a black female, approximately 12 years old. She's 5 foot 1 inches tall, approximately 90 to 100 pounds. Last known location, again, is in the vicinity of Johnson Avenue in Pensacola, Florida. She was wearing a red spaghetti strap t-shirt, red, white, and blue American flag shorts. We're not sure about the shoes that she was wearing, but she had on a white choker necklace. Now, the question always becomes, what have you done to this point? We're also honored today to have with us some of our partner agencies, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Florida Department of Law Enforcement is also here, as is Escarosa Search and Rescue. So I will briefly outline some of the things that we have done to date. And again, if you have any specific questions on those areas of our partners in this, as well as the State Attorney's Office, who's represented today by Mr. John Molchan, I'll let those specific areas and officers answer those questions. We also have our lead investigator, who is Michelle Wirtz, who is sitting over in the corner. She has the black t-shirt on with the Sheriff's Office printed across the front. She'll also be available to answer any questions after the press conference. As you can well imagine, these are the ones that we dread, and the reason being is this, is we don't have other than, I will tell you that we've developed a couple of persons of interest. I want to be very specific in that, persons of interest. These are the cases in law enforcement that you fear, meaning that we don't have a defined crime scene. We don't have a lot of physical evidence. We have a very small number of people that it's now drifting in. Our calls are continuing to increase, by the way, with information on Miss Jones in the afternoon. But again, nothing that we can definitively respond to, meaning that she was at this location. Why? Because we now have, I think, up to 3 different locations that we have people say that they spotted her. Calls are coming in today that she may have been spotted at Cordova Mall and other parts of Pensacola. So as you can well imagine, especially with social media, we have to field all of these calls and make the appropriate responses. Why? Because another fear that you have in law enforcement is the one tip that you don't respond to is the tip that would have led to the successful return of the child. So again, we're going in about 50 different directions here. We have called in the appropriate agencies to include this morning. We also asked for assistance from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They've been asked to come in and consult on this case. But we pretty much follow a checklist format on these instances. Why? You get an initial call of a child who's not returned home or is not in a location where they're supposed to be at a particular time. An officer makes an initial response to this, interviews the either custodial parent or a guardian of the child, and then the word goes out that we're looking for a child in this. If the child doesn't then return of a period of time after that, then it gets ramped up to the next level, meaning that we may now have a child that's not, responding to something spiteful, say with parents or guardians, in that I'm just going to disappear for a few hours and go sit out with my friends, that now we have a child that's non-communicating, meaning that they're not being communicative with family members and friends, and so now, again, the threat level, if you will, rises in that case. So then it goes out to our investigators, and then at that point we also contact Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and if the case expands to the point, we'll also call in our federal partners to assist, which we currently have at this. For those of you that follow these cases, you'll know that time frames are critical. 72 hours is a critical time frame for anyone that is missing. And so we're up against that timeline, if you will, because then our probabilities of having a successful resolution to this case, meaning that we find this child alive and hopefully unharmed, becomes less and less. And those are the realities of what we deal with in missing children cases in law enforcement. So we're asking again for our community, if you have any information about this child, anything at all that you can communicate to us that we can again run down that lead that could lead to the successful resolution of this case. And the successful resolution is returning this child to her parents. Again, we're making a plea to anyone that has any information. I can assure you that the Escambia County Sheriff's Office, along with the state attorney and all of our state and federal partners, we're leaving no stone unturned in our efforts to find this child. If you have anything that you could recommend to us that would assist in this, we certainly are not above that sort of thing. And with that, I'll turn it over briefly to Chief Deputy Chip Simmons, whose overall operation is in charge of the search for the child. Chief.
Thank you, Sheriff. The Sheriff pretty much covered everything, but I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of why we're here. Naomi Janelle Jones, she just had a birthday on April the 15th, and she turned 12 years old. She is not a teenager, but she is missing. As the Sheriff said, she's 5'1", she's 100 pounds. She's proud of the fact that she just graduated from Ferry Pass Elementary School. She's enjoying her summer, and she's excited about going to Ferry Pass Middle School. As the Sheriff said, she's wearing American flag shorts and a red tank top. She's 12 years old. She's not a teenager, but she is missing. And as the Sheriff said, we want everyone to take a second and look around where you are and spread this information, share it with everyone that you can, because she's 12 years old. And her parents do not know where she is, her friends do not know where she is, but all we know right now is that she's missing. We have had investigators and officers working day in and day out. You can probably tell by the fatigue in their eyes, but they're not going to stop. We're going to continue to look, and we're going to continue to search. As the Sheriff said, we're appreciative of our law enforcement partners. The FDLE, the FBI, Class Kids, we're so appreciative because with that kind of manpower, 90 people come at one time, and then we have 50 more deputies coming, so we're well over 100. And we do appreciate the media bringing this to the attention. I've been getting a number of phone calls from people that I know that know the family. So that tells you what networking can do. And again, that's all I really wanted to say is that we are here because Naomi Janelle Jones, she just had a birthday. She's about to go to Fair Pass Middle School, and we would love to find Naomi. So thank you very much.
Some of you may recall Owen Black was a young autistic child that drowned out in Perdido Key a few years ago. If you want to know how valuable partnerships are with the Escarosa folks and with Class Kids, just as with Naomi, from around the nation, people showed up to search for Owen, and the same thing is occurring now with Naomi Jones. We have people flying in from around the United States to assist in the search for this child. So, again, it's a community effort. It's now becoming a nationwide effort, and we're very, very appreciative. Mr. Molchan?
I think we want to stress to the community that every effort is being made to locate her. As the father of 3 daughters, I can't think of anything that would be more wonderful than to return Naomi to her mother at this point in time. And I hope that the community can see what kind of effort we're putting into this. And I would hope that they take the time to think about things that they may have seen, may have observed, that could give us that lead or tip to locating her at this point in time. Every effort is being made and every resource is being utilized to bring her back. And we certainly want to redouble our efforts and make sure that the community is aware to think about it, because we're out there as a whole involved in trying to find her, and we need now at this point everybody's help to bring her back.
And with that, we'll open it up for questions. And again, there may be a few questions that we can't answer, but we'll certainly do our best to answer all of those. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any reason to believe that something bad could have happened to Naomi at this time? Abduction, anything along those lines?
We are certainly moving along in that direction, and by that I mean we've gone beyond, if you will, again, a child. Sometimes And as the chief so aptly pointed out, I mean, we always think of this as teenagers, and Naomi's not a teenager yet. She's chronologically 12 years old. We find it very common, again, for kids, especially in a fight with either their peers or with their family, again, to get back at you, I'll disappear for a while. I'll leave the house, not tell you where I'm going, and I'm really down the street. I'm with friends, or I'm at possibly my pastor's house. There's various places children will go. But when that time frame, again, starts to progress longer than that, then we're gone beyond really something spiteful that a child would do to try to get back at their parents. And now we're at the realm of, you're missing. Why aren't you communicating with us? Children today all carry their cell phones, and that's something that's, problematic with Naomi. She left her cell phone at the house. And so there's no way for us to communicate directly with her if we possibly could. So those are the elements that we kind of line up in running our checklist on this and saying, okay, why haven't the following things happened? And usually there's a very logical answer. So now we're at a juncture to where we're thinking, she's not communicating with us because she can't. That in and of itself is indicative of what?
You mentioned persons of interest,
Mm-hmm.
kind of relating off her question. If you have someone of interest, are you leaning toward the abduction side, and what makes you believe that these people may be involved in some way?
Yeah, we believe the persons of interest are people that have, let me describe that. I know that word gets bandied about quite a little bit, and probably the interpretation of what it means. A lot of folks want to say that when we mention a person of interest, that they're really, quote unquote, a suspect that we just don't want to name right now. That's not true. Persons of interest are those people that in this investigation that we will admit to our community that in defining this case down, we have some folks that have some information about this case. So you are a person of interest. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are someone that may or may not have been engaged in the commission of this incident. But you have information, and so we're defining it down to where, hopefully you could be a person of interest that tells us, Sheriff, I saw her with that individual the other day, and here's the vehicle they were driving and a license number. You are then a person of interest. We want to contact you. We want to be in touch with you. Now, when we get to that point again to where we have folks that become, persons of interest / suspects, we're very honest about that. As you well know, we ask for your support in the media on that. Here's their photo. We're looking for these people. They are wanted for questioning in this case. We're not there yet. We have persons of interest that we think have more information about Naomi and the last few hours that again, she was in contact with our community. Those are the people that we're looking for now.
Custodial parent, dad, what's the situation there? Was she run off to dad's house without telling mom, or was there a hassle between mom and dad?
And
they're divorced?
Yeah, excellent question, Rob. Right now, we have contacted all of those people to include even relationships after the divorce occurred with mom and dad. At this time, we have no reason to believe that that's occurred. Everyone we've spoken with rare exception, has been very communicative. Mom's talked to us, dad's talked to us.
When it comes to his question as well, I spoke to the mom. Robert Jones is the father. She says that he has no relationship with his daughter, and
Right.
she has pleaded with you guys for search warrants to search his property. Does that help you guys or push you guys in his direction as a possible suspect, since he has no relationship with his daughter?
No, if anything, David, it's hindering our investigation. I'm going to caution everybody for this. We have a very deliberative process that we have to go through. And I will tell you what occurs in a community, and I know when I was in private practice, I'd get a list of witnesses for a particular case, something as simple as an automobile accident. I'd get a list of 15 witnesses, and I would contact very, diligently everybody on that list. And I would say, David, you're on my witness list for this accident. Well, what do you know about this? Well, I didn't see that. What you had done at work is you had related to what David Craig had told you about this accident. And so therefore you magically made my list. Why? Because you were talking in the office about an accident that occurred one day in Escambia County. You now become a witness. You had information about the vehicles involved, the drivers involved, who was injured, who wasn't. And so you are, quote unquote, a witness on a witness list. When you really saw nothing, you related what he told you. And so we define that down. And within our communities, because we so fervently, especially in these cases, want to find this girl unharmed. We all do. We now in our community the grapevine kicks in, and we start sharing information. And we start saying law enforcement should do this or they should do that, and I've given you the information. I can't tell you the number of times, David, I've been told there was a drug house in somebody's community. And I, again, practicing due diligence, come back to my office and notify Chief Simmons, who tells the narcotics guys that work for him, and they'll set up surveillance on this house, and there's no narcotics being sold at that house. But because vehicles come and go at different times of the day or night, well, that's, everybody knows that watches CSI that there's a narcotics house running out of there. And I spend inordinate amounts of time and money running those down. So I would caution you folks, you're not helping a situation without verifying your facts if you are communicating that by any medium whatsoever, print or otherwise, because then we feel the hate calls. Okay, Sheriff, why haven't you done X, Y, and Z? I will tell you, I've got hundreds of years of law enforcement experience at the Sheriff's Office, to include on the legal side with Mr. Molchan. And we're going to do everything legal and ethical to find this child. And you've got to ask yourself the question, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't anyone in this agency associated with trying to do everything they could to find these missing children? Does that benefit me to fail? Or does it benefit me to come back later and have to stand in front of my community and say, well, I didn't need that Escarosa group out there. They've got cadaver dogs and, they've got search dogs, go out there and do grid searches, but we don't want any part of that. We don't need that. Why would I do that? And the answer is, I wouldn't. I would do everything possible, because at the end of the day, I have to stand in front of this family and in front of this community and say I did everything humanly possible to find this child. Yes, ma'am.
As far as the search goes, you guys said that you're extending the search to waterways. Can you speak on that?
And after the press conference, we have boats in the water, and they're, again, doing, canals, riverways, inlets, that sort of thing. Yes, ma'am. And again, the search is expanding out. Right now, we will go after any lead of any substance, I will be honest with you. We're going to look everywhere that someone recommends.
Details leading up to her disappearance, like walking the dog, things like that. Can you go over that? And was the pet ever found? Were there brothers involved and things like that?
There are brothers in the home. They do have a dog. We have. Well, that's an excellent example. We have conflicting stories on that from different people. That she had, was back at the house with her brothers, was going to go visit a friend, was going to walk the dog. And now we've got another story that says, no, they left the dog at the house. She did not walk the dog. She grabbed some money and left the house, didn't take her cell phone with her. So again, in law enforcement, these are the things that we are filtering through. I have a version of events that are similar in nature, meaning that she left the house alone with some money. But I've got versions of her going to walk the dog, not walk the dog, et cetera, by different individuals. And so that's part of this fluidity of every investigation. We have to filter through all of this. So what you just relayed is an excellent example. Part of what you just said, we believe to be true. And now I interview Rob Williams, and Rob says, no, she didn't walk the dog. The dog's in the house with the two brothers. And then we go back and talk to the brothers, and the brothers will tell us, well, the dog was here for part of the day, but part of the day he wasn't. So what's the truth? The truth is always somewhere in the middle. And so that's what we're doing now, is we're filtering all of that out.
Have you found the dog?
Yes.
Okay.
We've been getting a lot of questions on Facebook, just about what time you all first got a call about this, and then why, was it 24 hours before anything was posted on Facebook with her picture? Why has there not been an Amber Alert? So can you clear that up for our audience? The criteria you have to follow and the process that you have to go through, starting from what time you all first received a phone call about her?
Well, again, the call is coded out, meaning the dispatch is coded out. What criticality of the codes. As you can well imagine, a call comes into central dispatch, there's shots fired or robbery in progress, et cetera. Officer involved shooting, officer down. Those are number one. Those are priority one calls. You go to those first. Go all the way down the list to a barking dog. Loud music being played or whatever, which would obviously be down at the bottom of the list. And as you're responding to one of those incidents, if one comes in that's of a higher priority, you will literally break off a call to respond to that one, especially one involving potentially a loss of life or whatever. This call, as it initially came in, again, was a child that's, just hasn't come home. We get those every day. A child, leaves school this afternoon and was supposed to come directly home from school and stops off and does a pickup game of basketball. And so, the parents wait a couple hours and then they'll call and say, Johnny's not home. He's supposed to be here. We get all in a flurry. We would not gin up what we've got ginned up to find Naomi Jones. Why? Because if we did that every time, we would be doing that 2 and 3 times a day. So what we do is we wait for a time frame to occur. And in this case, again, I want to get back and caution everybody on specific time frames. We now cannot define the time that she was actually, quote unquote, missing. We've got about a 4-hour time frame here that she could have been missing at any one time. When did the initial call come in? The story is changing from who noticed when she wasn't where she was supposed to be, at what time. Did she leave the house with the dog, without the dog? What did she have with her? And on and on and on. So at this juncture of any investigation, you've got a lot of confusing information, and depending upon who you talk to, you'll get the finger wagging fact. Well, I can tell you that we called that sheriff's office at this time and nobody responded. Well, folks, everything we're doing is a matter of public record, and at the end of the day, you're going to get all of these documents.
So somewhere, I guess, in that 4-hour window, there was a call, but then it was.
And we had an officer respond, okay, and got basic preliminary information about, the child, her age, her dress, what she looks like, where her last known location was, and we put that information out to the sheriff's office. See, I think what I'm hearing from the community is number one, we did respond. Yes, we did. And number two, we did normal protocols, meaning that we took the initial information and put it out over the net to our officers to be on the lookout for this child. Because right now, we just have a child that's not where she's supposed to be at a particular time. We have no reason to believe that she's been abducted. We have no reason to believe that she's left the area on her own. She's a runaway. Right now, we just have a child that's shown up. And this is standard protocol. We put that out for now. Every officer driving around in Escambia County has got access to this information. So if they see this child, they'll report it. And I will tell you that over 90% of the time, we find most of the children that way. There's times that I'll get a call at home and somebody will say, Sheriff, they're at the 6-hour time frame at this point, we probably need to do a little more. And then that's when we make the call. Do we call Florida Department of Law Enforcement? Do we talk about Amber Alerts, that sort of thing? The Amber Alerts, again, this is information that you're causing us problems by reposting this stuff on your Facebooks. Number one, we don't control Amber Alerts, okay? We call the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and we give them the criteria of what the case is that we're currently dealing with. They make that determination, does it meet the statutory criteria for an Amber Alert, which you can well imagine is very high. Why? It's just like you want us to gin up, as we are right now, to find Naomi Jones for every case of a child that didn't come home from school in the afternoon when they were supposed to, when they're playing basketball, at the local park. Again, we don't have enough manpower and material to do that. We have to have, again, a more rational reason to ramp our operation up to that point. Taking this to the state level with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, it's the same with meeting the criteria for an Amber Alert. Lieutenant Colonel Ron Ross called yesterday within about a 24-hour time frame and had communications with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and said, here's the case that we're working in Escambia County for Naomi Jones. They, in their committee process, made the determination that you didn't meet the statutory requirement for us to do an Amber Alert. And so therefore, it never went beyond that.
So there wasn't like one certain incident or anything that happened that all of a sudden you were like, oh, we need to re-up our manpower or, call X, Y, and Z people and the FBI need to come in the FDLE. It was just a time thing?
Well, it's always a time thing. I didn't find the child, so what do I do next? I mean, if you'll logically step through this with us, folks, I get a call for the child that again, is not where they're supposed to be at a particular time. You can say they're missing, they just didn't show up at home. Again, I'm using the example of the basketball game after school. Now, when the child's not there for dinner, and the parents are calling everybody they know. I'm calling Grandma and Grandpa, I'm calling, Johnny's friends, etc., and nobody's seen him. They don't know where he is. Now, again, they recontact us. We've got the information out there. We're looking for Johnny, but Johnny hadn't been found yet. Logically stepping through this, folks, we don't just say, well, we responded and took a report. So quite obviously, we're going to do the next level thing. All right, we're going to call our investigators. And now we're going to get down, we're going to start making up flyers, okay? We're going to call the Class Kids Foundation. We're going to start expanding that net of people so that, hey, we're now beyond a child just not coming home from school. We're now thinking that possibly this child either has been abducted or is injured somewhere. There's a whole host of possibilities as to why we haven't found this child yet. It's not necessarily an abduction. It's not necessarily mayhem has been committed on this child. It's just we can't find them. So obviously we start growing this, and that's the protocols that I spoke of.
How does the search continue? Are you guys going to go overnight into the morning? Are you going to call it off after a certain amount of time tonight and then pick back up in the morning? How does that work?
No, we have had a crew around the clock, okay, since the 31st, the afternoon of the 31st. Now, your crew will die down, expand, contract, depending upon the number of calls that we're getting. But I can tell you that, we have along with Escarosa, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, there's either always someone in place at our command center over at Olive Baptist Church, or there's someone out, shaking trees, patrolling the waterways looking for this child. It's a 24-hour-a-day operation. When you say, what juncture do we get to where we shut this down? That will be a collective decision made in conjunction with the state attorney's office and our state and federal partners as to whether or not, much like, there's, I guess a good corollary here would be a missing boater or an aircraft goes down. When the folks, go out, first you go out hopefully for a rescue operation. And at some point, a rescue operation becomes a recovery operation. And that determination will be made collectively.
When it comes to, you keep mentioning the 72-hour clock, manpower, you guys have all these people. When it comes to just searching the area.
No, yeah, David, good. Let me stop you there and clarify you. The 72-hour clock is what the experts tell us on what's the probability of finding the child unharmed. After you get past the 72-hour time frame, statistically that just begins to fall off the table, and that's what we're very concerned about. So when you initially make the determination that this child it's gone beyond the child just not showing up where they're supposed to be, that we may have a missing and or abducted child, then you go full tilt from that point forward, because your best chance of finding them is within the 72-hour time frame and for them to be found safe and secure. Once that occurs, then your probabilities start dropping off. If you stop and think about it, this is a time and motion thing many times. If I abduct a child in Pensacola, Florida, initially I'm going to hide. I don't want to move around too much because I may have a victim that doesn't, quite obviously want to be with me. But with each passing hour, I can be leaving Florida now, and I'm into Mississippi, I'm into Georgia, I'm into Alabama, I'm in a whole host of surrounding states, going where I need to go, and we're still searching for you locally. So the chances for me to find you nationally become less and less and less, and that's why we call in our federal partners.
When it comes to that, for example, just FDLE's website of sex offenders in that area,
Right.
It shows more than 325 sex
Yes.
offenders in a 5-mile radius. Just in the 1-mile radius, there's
And,
18. When it comes to manpower and going up against the clock.
And David, and what do you think the Escambia County Sheriff's Office did within the first 24 hours?
And that was going to be my question, like, when it comes to your resources, how do you distribute this when there's such a large amount of people who may have an interest in a child?
Well, number one, most of that is computer stuff and computer generated. And so our Florida Department of Law Enforcement partners will pull that information up and verify locations of those individuals.
When it comes to your policy also, the mom was arrested after she called in her child for outstanding warrants.
Mm-hmm.
She claims that there was a lot of valuable time that she lost trying to find her child, going through the processing and all that stuff. What's the policy on that when you have a concerned parent looking for her child and you have a missing child, but there's also an outstanding warrant out for this individual, whatever the warrant may be for?
You're asking me and or the state attorney's office then to become the law. Okay, if there's a warrant out for your arrest and I have information or knowledge of where you're at, you're to be taken into custody. That's, what I am paid to do. While, you want to be compassionate about the enforcement of the law, that's not a decision that a sheriff makes. I'm not going to respond to that second part of the mother's statement that, she could have been out searching for her child. I'm not going to go there. That's, I'm dealing with a grieving parent right now, and I'm not going to respond in kind to statements like that. Thank you all very much.